So Karen and I would sit there and have discussions. And the discussions, as she looked out at 100, 200, we'd have sometimes up to 200 people in the room. Judge, I like to live with my friends like you do. I don't want to have to move away. Judge, I'd like to vote. I want to vote. And she would carry on. I'd like a job where I can use my brain and be paid a fair wage. And then I'll get a little emotional, but I'd like to be believed as a victim of harassment or assault. I can't even capture what happened after the first seminar. People would come up, people come up to her and say, Karen, and I'm talking about prominent, experienced judges, justices, and lawyers. Karen, you have opened our eyes. Thank you, Karen, for showing us the way. They weren't saying that to me. They were saying that to her. Karen, we're sorry. We had no idea we were carrying around these stereotypes all these years. And so I can't even capture. And so really, this major change in making presentations to organizations, and then we would put, she would, on her own, she had done this, did little photographs. So for example, we'd put up on the screen something she'd written, none of us, a ballot box with a ballot. Or, and say, I would like to vote. I have the right to vote, Judge. Or put up with two people walking down a street holding hands. I have friends too. I'd like to live, Judge, with my friends like you do. I don't want to have to move away. And those are just two of many examples. And then another one that very serious, but also I think kind of put people at. I like to play pool. In fact, I beat Judge Frank, which she did. And but I mean, I think so we'd have this discussion, and we did that for a number of years. Well, then also she and a number of her friends were also the individuals that had said to me, and so I do have pictures of that just because it was such a special time for me. Well, Judge, you invited us to where you work for Civics Day. I think you need to come and visit us where we work. In this case, it was at Merrick. So out I went, and then somehow, I don't know if it's through Coley&Wick or others, they found out one of my addictions, which is ice cream, and we ate ice cream together out there too. But so no, I thought that was a fair question. We've come to visit where you work. I think you should come to visit where we work. And so every time that we'd have these seminars, lawyers would come up, not to me, not to the other people on the panel. Coley&Wick was on the panel, to the credit of a number of people from the U.S. Attorney's Office and other places talking about the work they were doing in the disability community. They'd come up to Karen and thank her and acknowledge we've been carrying around these stereotypes for many years. Please don't remain silent. Please tell people my story. Let me tell my story. And so whether it's institutional stereotyping or unfairness or it's assumptions made, we have to not stay silent and speak out. And so, and that's exactly what's been happening. So for example, we've had numerous ceremonies where people say Thank you, Karen. Now it's changed how we interact. If we live and work together, or as something Karen would say to people, and I'd watch a few tears drip down people, I like to laugh and cry with my friends too. And you don't realize until you live and work with individuals, with disabilities, you make assumptions that are almost always untrue. That's why that exchange we'd have about what's the most important rights has really changed. CLEs has changed everything because of the assumptions even good people made. In talking about Karen, I also have to say, we've talked about, have we seen the effects? Well, I can talk about the effects on other people. I can talk the effects on me as well, about some of the assumptions we made and the benefit of living with, working with, the benefits of inclusion, and the fancy word, of course, for some people is integration. But for example, during these CLEs, I learned, and I've gone to observe them since, that Karen was a member of a group called Shooting Stars, Ambassadors of Respect. They'd go into schools and talk about anti-bullying and bullying, and people hadn't really thought about things they did or things they did, making fun of people or not about, but it focused disproportionately on people with disabilities. So these self-advocates were incredible to go in and talk, and just like Karen would say to all these lawyers, and then they thought, that really is the meaning of equal justice under law, even though she's not using all these fancy phrases. I want to treat people with kindness. I want to treat people equally. And it mesmerized people. And I think because it just was such an intense reminder of what equal justice under law is, if we really are going to carry out our promise to provide that and the access to it. So there's a tradition in the federal court that they do two things. You're requested to ask to hire, when you go on senior status, they want to do a portrait of you, and then importantly, they say what you want in your portrait. And whether it's a positive or negative, the portrait person who's done many, many portraits over the years said, I've never had so many requests by a judge to have these certain things in the, so there's a bracelet in there of disability rights or civil rights. And then maybe most importantly, I said, here's one of my most special portraits, and that is a gift I got from former staff on the 25th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act, because they said this is every day. This is something that's a part of what you do in your oath. Well, because of that, and I didn't realize at the time I did it that I guess a lot of others hadn't done it, I invited a fairly significant number of people with disabilities to my portrait ceremony, because I wanted them to see, because they're part of an integral part of our community, and so we talk the words diversity, but sometimes we forget, hey, let's make sure it's truly diverse. Well, in any event, a large number of people with disabilities were there, and because I also wanted them to say that I try to do my best to walk the talk. In other words, they could see I had, and somebody might say, well, the people who knew me didn't have to ask me, why do you have singled out these things, disability? Well, I said, it really is, they have taught me, and this shows us, to give true meaning to equal justice under law and access to that justice. It's the individual disabilities who have really kind of showed me the way.